Welcome to another podcast, Whispers from the Hearth, where we're bridging generations to share their inner visions and their elder wisdom. And today we have a very special elder with us named Maggie. Maggie just celebrated her 80th birthday and celebrated in such a beautiful way that she took an international trip to Ireland. So she has lots of joy in her heart after treating herself to such a great celebration for her 80th birthday. So thank you for being here, Maggie. There is no rush, no right answer. We are simply listening for what your life has taught you. So before we move
Okay.
into specific moments and reflections, I would love to begin here. When you look back over your life so far, what feels most alive to name about the journey that shaped you into who you are today?
A few things. One of the biggest things was getting into a sailboat life, traveling around the world, and having a lot of quiet time after living in New York City for 20 years, figuring out what's next in my life. And I was on night watch one night, and I heard a voice scream at me. While my husband was asleep, we were sailing from Sicily to Malta. A voice screaming at me saying, "You have to work with the dying." And I screamed back because as a nurse all my life, I've never, ever seen anybody die. And I worked critical care for many, many years in Manhattan. So I was like, what? Work with the dying? I'm a death phobe. So um, when it was time for my husband to get up, I discussed it with him before we actually landed in Malta. And lo and behold, Malta, as tiny as it is, due south of Sicily, has a hospice. So I went there to talk to them, and they said, we would love to hire you. You have a lot of critical care experience, a lot of nursing experience. And I was like, oh my God, this is all happening so quick. But then they said it would take months to get all the paperwork. They were steeped in British paperwork, British bureaucracy. So my husband and I decided it was time to go back to the States and make money anyway, because we had to work every 2 years, about 4 months to keep this whole lifestyle going. And we usually went back to Miami Beach, Miami area, because we could both get work. Me as a nurse, he is a boat rebuilder. And the biggest hospice in all of the world is in South Miami, called Vitas.
Wow.
So, I mean, it was all these pieces were falling into place. And I was scared because I've never seen anybody die. But I remember the night before I couldn't sleep and it was going to be a 12-hour shift. I already had the patient's diagnosis and a few other things. And my husband dropped me off and I was praying. I became a praying woman now because God gave me this insight to do this. So I was praying that this gentleman would not die right away so I could get used to watching this whole process. And he lasted 4 days, and I was there for 12 hours each day, and it was beautiful. It was a gentle death, and the family was there, and they were so happy I was there to help. And, I would have a visit from the doctor, visit from the social worker, and their information. So I was hooked. This was my new career in life, from critical care to hospice care. And then I became a death doula later on in life. So this is where I am now, but that was a transformative, from the boating life and for 16 years, traveling around the world, to working in a hospice, which I'm doing right now. I have, not hospice, I have my own business as a home care nurse and a doula at the end of life. Very part-time for me, and I hire other people. So that was a big switch in my life, and I'm really happy that I gleaned the wisdom and followed it.
That's a beautiful, beautiful story. And as much as I thought I was starting to get to know you, I had no idea that that's what actually incubated who you are today. And I mean, just when you just think about the fact that you you traveled for 16 years on a sailboat. I mean, just to get to go to Malta. I mean, can you name some of the places you got to go stay and live at for
Oh,
periods
yeah.
of time?
Well, out of the 16 years, I'd say at least 12 of those were actually on the boat, traveling and anchoring in marinas and visiting a ton of countries. We went as far north as Ireland, and I loved it so much. And that was in the 90s. My husband has since died 22 years ago, but I remember the people being off the charts, amazingly friendly and helpful.
Oh,
And that's why I picked Ireland for my 80th birthday to go back and do a land trip. So we were there a month, but we went to many places, all of the Mediterranean, um, as far east as Turkey, as far south as Brazil, and a few countries on the Western African coastline, and all of the Eastern Caribbean, all of the Western Caribbean.
wow.
So we found a place and we liked it. We would just stay and usually anchor out if we could, if the weather was good enough, and dinghy, take our little boat, our dinghy in. And in the Mediterranean, you pretty much in the winter, you have to go into a marina. But that was cool too, because we're all nesting together through the winter
I love it.
and you get to know one another.
That's a lovely, lovely story. Have you ever considered writing a book?
We did write a book and it got published and did well.
Cool.
And it's still there in the used piles, you know, at
What's it
different
called?
alibis. It's called Financial Freedom Afloat.
I love it.
Subtitle, How to Pocket a Paycheck in Paradise.
I love
So we
that.
interviewed all kinds of boaters because lots of places we went to, there was no marinas. I mean, we chose not to most of the time because it was a lot of money and we wanted to stretch our budget. But we were with very fancy yachts, many feet long, with, you know, one, I remember had a helicopter on board, several dinghies, and the captain was sent over by the owner to invite us over for cocktails and dinner, and they picked us up and took us, and then we saw all these chandeliers. We were totally waited on. So we actually asked them, how do you keep this lifestyle going, because we're writing a book? And he said, well, I'm pretty wealthy and I have my this is the wealthy ones, pretty wealthy, and I have my crew to live. I want to go, you know, I have people that cook for me and do everything. All I have to do is just show up. And then there was us on the other end of the spectrum, that we were always like, all right, how much money do we have? You know, how can we make money? And so we interviewed a lot of people like that and how they did it. So this is all in the book. And then there was the middle class people. We divided it into three classes. Middle class was like people that were retired and looking for something to do. And lots of times what they were doing was volunteering in children's homes, places that were close to the water, rebuilding water systems, doing all kinds of stuff. And they didn't really need to make money either, because they had retired usually, or um, had money. Because this is before we had the internet. You know, you had to go to shore, usually at a bigger city, to get any sort of internet connection. We sailed around in the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s. And it was before GPS too. I mean, it was a whole different world back then. But we enjoyed it. And I have to mention, we didn't know how to sail when we
Oh
bought the boat, but
no.
my husband convinced me that we would learn. And I'll tell you, there were times when I felt like I wanted to go back to New York City, because we subleased our apartment, which was still legal to this day in New York. And I was screaming, and I used to have black hair, and it was turning gray by all my, like, oh my God, the boat went on its side and all the stuff's going in the water, and lots of drama. But we figured it out, and it took us about 6 years before we crossed oceans.
I mean,
It was
what
an
a
adventure.
great story. I mean,
I
talk about adventure. I'm so proud of you that you even did something like that. Like, that's just amazing.
know, I know.
All right, so I'm gonna,
Ignorance is bliss, right?
yeah. Well, but not just ignorance, it's also the willingness to be curious and go out there and be adventurous. I mean, I can't even fathom how much you guys grew as a result on so many levels. No wonder you're so friendly to the
Um,
world because you were out there with so many different, groups of people and avenues of people, and it makes sense now that
yeah,
you're so charismatic and friendly
yeah.
like you are. Wow.
Right. And it's like, I mean, I feel so protected being on the land, even though we just went a couple of years, 1 year ago, a little over a year ago, went through a tropical storm here that was big. But there I have stories that I felt like I almost lost my life, near-death experiences twice on the boat for all those years. But most of the time it was just, like smooth sailing. As somebody's always on watch and looking out, you can be reading a book or down below cooking or taking a nap. Sometimes it was boring, like, let's get there. And then there were those times where the whole boat fell on its side in the North Atlantic, and I was outside on watch, and if it wasn't for the safety harness, I wouldn't be here today, because that's what held me onto the boat.
What was it that held you? What exactly was it?
A safety harness, picture a kid safety
Gotcha.
harness, but this is an industrial strength one, really, and you hook it onto the high side of the boat when you're outside and onto the lifeline. And my husband was asleep, and we were hardly moving. We had shortened sail, and I was trying to read a little bit just to distract from the banging and the crashing of 20-foot seas and the wind, and all of a sudden the boat lifted up and it went all the way over, mast, everything into the water. And I slid, and I was like inches from the Atlantic Ocean. My face was like, oh my God. And then the boat came up. Fortunately,
The
our
boat came
big
back up
keel,
on its
steel
own.
keel, didn't break.
Wow.
Yeah, because we had a big steel keel underneath the boat and it didn't crack, fortunately, with all that stress, because water's heavy and very stressful. So my husband opened up the hatch because everything was closed up. He got thrown across to the other side of the boat, and he said, "Maggie, you were there. Where are you?" And I said, "What the hell was that?" And he said, "That was a knockdown." And in sailor term, that is like, I knew that term. And I started like shaking like a seizure. Because we're in the middle of nowhere in the North Atlantic. He said, "Come down below. We have to see if we're taking in water." Oh my God. Fortunately, we weren't, which was a great sign, because if the boat's leaking, you just have to abandon ship. She was strong. Yeah, our good old gal was made in 1939, and she was an old wooden boat, but
What
she
was
was
her
strong.
name?
Her name is a strange name by it's called Fomalhaut, Fomalhaut. When we bought the boat, we had no idea about a lot of things, but even the name. And it's the designer was Bud McIntosh, and the builder was Sam Crocker, which built one of a kind wooden boats in New Hampshire. And he would have all these different names on his boats. And this one was a navigational star. It's a huge number 1 star, magnitude 1 in the southern sky. And a lot of sailing vessels. And when we did, we didn't have GPS back then. We had a sextant. So we were doing our sailing navigation with stars. So we found Fomalhaut in the southern sky. We called it Foamy for short, but it was amazing to find out the history of the boat.
Oh my
And
gosh, that's
yeah,
why I love to get to talk to elders because there are so many beautiful stories that need to get out there.
yeah, we do have.
I was here too with you and during Helene and just listening to AM radio and listen to the Appalachian people, there were so many characters out there. I'm like, oh my gosh, we need to get this elder voice out. So what a great, great story. All right, I'm
Yeah,
going to get you with some deeper questions. So
go
was
ahead. Uh-oh.
Okay, here we go. Was there a moment in your life when you saw something that broke your heart and you knew you could never look away again?
Yes. When I was 20, I was moving out of the house to another state. I had just graduated nursing school, and I was trying to run away from, also not only get my own place, which I had in Connecticut. I was from Rhode Island, but get away from my very dysfunctional family. And my mother and stepfather knew I was leaving, so I was coming down the stairs with my pink Samsonite luggage. Remember that? Bright
Yes.
pink Samsonite luggage from years ago. And my mother, I thought she was just drunk, asleep on the couch. And I went over to her and I saw an empty bottle of pills. And I saw she wasn't breathing and had no pulse. She overdosed. And I was angry. I was blown away. I was trying to escape, get away, stop my life. And she was dead. And I was at home alone in the house.
Oh my
My
God.
brother had already graduated college and he was
Oh,
working in actually North Carolina, was assistant city manager. And my stepfather was at work. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, yeah, that I can never forget. That was, and of course I couldn't go to my job or my new home after that. And I called the doctor because at those times doctors made house visits, at least in small towns. And I remember he came over because he knew my mother's history, and he said, "All right, did you already call your father?" And I said, "Yes, he's coming." He was like a good half hour away at work, and he said, "Now, remember, I want to tell you, we're going to tell in the death certificate that it was kidney failure. We are not going to mention this overdose." And at that time, I was like, I was just, you know, it was surreal. It was like I was numb. I was
I
frozen. I didn't
bet.
think about it. But later on in life, I thought about that was not right. I mean, he should have, anyway. I know he was trying to protect the family, and we didn't have to post it in the local newspaper, but it got posted with my mother's name and said she died of kidney failure. But I was responsible because I'm the girl and the nurse, the daughter, to pick out her clothes, make
Oh,
all the arrangements with the funeral parlor.
wow.
It was awful, just awful. And plus, my life was where do I go? Who am I? So,
So shattering on
but
every,
nobody,
wow.
yeah, yeah, that's something I'll never forget. But you know what? After all these years in therapy and all kinds of good things I've done for myself, I have forgiven her and a whole bunch of them. Because there's many other stories, but that was that overdose was. I still don't know to this day. Was it on purpose? She didn't want me to leave. She was trying to make a statement. Of course, she didn't take care of me growing up. You know, my brother was the chosen child, and I was abused and left behind. So, but
Wow.
now I got to a point in my life where I've forgiven. I have forgiven them all, and it feels great because
Yeah.
they must have been had a hard time growing up too with their parents, who I never knew. My grandparents, who knows what went on back
Right.
then? People didn't speak. It was the family secrets.
Yep. Yep. Somebody
But yeah,
called.
it's all okay, and I feel sorry for them. You know,
Wow.
they
Bless your
suffered.
heart. So just out of curiosity, how long did it take before you actually did leave that area after
Um,
that?
well, I got back with my husband. Actually, I was dysfunctional too, and I was married, got married at 20, and after less than a year, I decided to go live back with my parents. And it was just, I didn't know why. I just didn't want to be married. He was a nice guy. He didn't, he was kind to me. It was nice looking, had a good profession. But then I got back with him, and then it was the time of the military draft, right? Vietnam, and tried to get me pregnant, and there would he would be exempt in the state of Rhode Island. It was different state by state. Then I found out I was sterile. I couldn't get
Oh,
pregnant. But it was all a good thing in the big picture many years forward. But he went into the service with a delayed enlistment, not go to Vietnam. So we were in the military life for 4 years, the U.S. Force. After that, I said, I have to go live by myself. I don't know who I am. And he said, don't you love me? I said, honey, I don't know what love is. I don't even love myself. I have no idea what love is. So I went and lived by myself. And now this is where my life really begins. Living by myself. I started transcendental meditation. That was offered in New York City. It was, it was very new, this
yeah.
Maharishi that came from India.
Mhm.
And that just took me to a different
Mm.
empowering level. I went back to nursing school to get my RN because I had an LPN before that, and took some courses like psychology and sociology and stuff like that. It was like, whoa, this is great. Maybe I'll be something else in life. But and then met a great guy that I fell in love with, and we spent 5 years together, and it was nice. But then it had a DC date, discontinue date. I could see because of he was going one way, I was going the other, but that was okay. So my life in New York City, I became a roller skating queen. I loved to roller skate, and
Oh,
we were just starting
cool.
outside. It was when people weren't even skating outside. We were the group in Washington Square Park. We would go there with our boom boxes and skate, and
Oh,
then
how
go up to Central Park
fun.
for Halloween, dressed up. And a lot of my
Yeah.
friends were gay. They were the ones that were out there dancing with me. And we were in contests, and I had a choreographer, and we won a first prize. So we were on TV. I won a moped, and my partner won,
Yay.
not my just my dance partner, won a moped, and it certainly didn't want that. But second prize was a $500 pair of skates, and so I switched it up with the woman who got second prize because she wanted my moped and I wanted her skates.
Perfect.
So that was fun. That was so much fun. I almost said, no more nursing. I am going to be a performer, a dance, because this was a dance thing that we were doing on roller skates. But I
You'd
said
be a
no.
great performer.
Yeah. But I always, I've always loved nursing, taking care of people, and in different ways. I've been all kinds of nursing. I mean, like I said, high-end critical care in New York City. I taught nursing school. I've worked with kids. I've,
Wow.
I've done corporate nursing. I've done a lot. And now here I am with taking care of people at the end of life. And I love it. Just love it. Brought me full circle.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a beautiful heroic journey. So can you remember a time when you were under great strain yet chose gentleness instead of resistance?
Well, my my husband died of a heroin overdose 22 years ago. He decided to try it and he got hooked. And it took about 2 years for him to actually overdose. And I know it wasn't on purpose. And my cousin that I grew up with in Rhode Island, that we were always in touch and visited, we were like sisters. She was just a few months younger than me. She turned against me, and she, for that and other reasons, the incest within my family. She didn't want to believe that her uncle and my stepfather could do such things, and she just refused all these years to get together with me, to talk to me. So I responded with voicemails, texts, sending little cards that said love on them, and I
Mm,
love you, and
mm,
I hope we can get together before, when we're still in this
yay.
this body. But she just she her daughter overdosed too, and I don't think she
Oh,
ever recovered from it, and she just can't. Um, you know, I don't know exactly, but it's, I've just about given up trying. It's been years, but I still send her, love in the ethers. I sent her a Christmas card, but I never got anything back. But it's all okay. I'm just trying to meet her where she is, and it's all okay. She's got suffering too, obviously.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
wonderful story, though. I mean, we just don't even understand, in life's journey when we do those beautiful acts of tenderness and kindness. Even though
Hmm.
that person may not receive it, you may have opened up a seed or planted a bloom for them to somehow give it to somebody else, even though they can't give it back to you. And if
Yeah.
I were to assess it just as a really just an observer that knows very little, I would say it was just too difficult for her to receive love. I mean, and have intimacy
Yeah.
after that loss and stuff like that. So it's kind of like get away, get away, get away. But that's a great story of your willingness to just, still stay neutral and offer that
Yeah.
some tenderness. I mean, what a beautiful, we just don't
Thank you.
understand how far-reaching our random acts like that are. Even though it may not be that
Yeah.
person directly, I still believe it goes out into the ethers, because you've offered it to that
Hmm.
person. So great story. So what helped you stay present rather than harden? What changed in you that caused
Well,
Oops, you're
I've been
frozen.
here 20 years, and I was working at Care Partners Hospice, our local hospice here, and I got to be a preceptor teacher for a new doctor that came to Care Partners Hospice to learn what hospice was all about. And I was doing crisis care. I've pretty much been doing crisis care work a good part of my life, intensive care, critical care. So I was the crisis care hospice nurse for patients that were in need, usually of more medication, or the family needing help in the home. So I would work 8 to 12 hours. And so this Dr. Aditi Sethi Brown, and she came, she was only supposed to visit with me for an hour and stayed 4 hours. And we washed the patients here. She was in bed. She was at the end of life, but still cognizant and appreciating getting a bed bath and getting her hair washed and, her nails done and all that stuff. And Aditi was like, oh God, this is so unmedicalized. I love it. So right after that, she formed a group with 15 people to try to figure out how we could get our own place that's not medicalized, because she was now working as a doctor at this hospice once she went through the preceptorship, the year-long scholarship that she had. So once a month, this group of 12 to 15 people once a month, and coming up with all kinds of ways and ideas what we wanted to do, but money was always an issue. So about 2.5 years ago, Aditi, I became very good friends with her. I knew her, we've got a place here now. And she came to me one day. She actually gave me a patient that was wanted to voluntary stopping eating and drinking. And I knew about it, and this was my first patient, and she wanted, so I was going for an interview. So she came by one day to see how we were all doing, and she said, Maggie, look at this picture of this place, down in Swananoa. I want that place. Look at that, 6 acres of land. I want that. I said, Aditi, let's go into the other room and just, bring it in. We're going to, and just bring it in that we want it and really put it out there, and sure enough, a donor that didn't really know her heard about her vision, our vision, and he is still holding the mortgage on this place, because we're trying to pay him down, but it's taken a while. But this guy is like, he's only in his early 70s, but he's got a lot of money and he's got a great heart, and he always comes to our potluck meetings. And but he doesn't want people to really know that he's the guy with all the money. But this really changed my life, that I'm a member there. I'm one of the co-founders of this place,
Yay.
and really helped start it. We went out when we first went there, it needed work. And but it's such a beautiful place on Cherokee Indian land. And we have we have 3 beds out there where we can take care of people at the end of life, if they have 2 months or less to live, and have been trained up at least as doulas for the dying. And if they want a fire going, we have 2 fire pits, one outside and one inside a teepee, which we raise money for,
Oh.
and invite the family, the visitors to come. And sometimes the patients can still be a little bit ambulatory and go sit by the fire. And we have like almost 300 volunteer members, and about 25 different teams of anywhere from, working, they call it the suites, direct care in the suites, taking care of these patients. Um, People take care of the grounds, and we have a labyrinth out there, and we have beehives, and we have the nourishment team, and we have the tool time team, and to fix things. And I mean, it's just amazing. And the people are just the wisdom circle. We have so many things going on out there. That has changed my life, and it's only 5 miles away from me.
So
So
perfect.
I'm out there at
I'm
least
so
2
glad
months a
you're
week.
part of it. Wow. Absolutely gorgeous. So what did that moment
Yeah.
awaken or change in you? Not that you had so much going for you. I can't imagine that anything had to awaken or change in you through what you just talked about.
Well, at first I thought I would work, do direct care with the patients in the suites. And then, I was working on getting my own little business going. And they said, well, Maggie, I know you've been trained up. You've actually gone to doula school with a DT. I just looked at the certificate from 9 years ago. That was one of the first schools in the United States. They brought it to Asheville. And I said, I have my own way of doing things, because I've been doing one-on-one with patients for years. And they had a little bit of a structure that I just didn't agree with. But it was okay because there's plenty of other things that I can get into over there. I am we have a potluck. It used to be every month, but it was just too much in different ways. But when we have it every other month, I am the greeter there, and I have a big red heart that I stand outside on the porch and greet everybody. And if they don't have a name tag or forgot their name tag, then, I help them get a name tag. So I really enjoy that.
That's
I'm the meter and
beautiful.
greeter.
That's way fun.
So that's my best job there. And then I do tours once in a while. When I feel like I have an extra time, I'll put myself on the tour committee. And that's the best way to find out
Oh, I
about how
think that
that
would
place
be
works.
really fun. Because
Yeah,
people are
yeah,
just at
yeah.
their heart's in a different place when they're taking on something like that.
Oh,
And
oh, just to step into that and be curious, because a lot of us elders are curious about what is end of life all about. It's scary. I mean, I know. I mean, thank God I'm working in the field and I'm so much less scared now. Not
Mhm,
that I'm not totally, on board with it, but I'm certainly know that it's going to happen, and it makes me feel like I want to live every moment,
mhm,
and not just every day, but every moment as much as I can, because who knows when the end's coming,
mhm.
you know.
Well, and
It's very few
as you
people.
know, I'm going through it too with my husband. You do know
Yes,
that, and
yes,
I've
yes.
been astounded, really, truly, truly astounded at how divine and beautiful it is going. And I keep saying to my husband, this is your creation. You're the one that's made this work out like this. And I
That's right.
the open-mindedness of all the relatives to discuss it and meet it and express what it feels like for them, and just all the different avenues and all the wonderful people that are coming by to visit, and just the cool discussions. And it's just like I just said that, and we're getting to house it at a house that just could not be more beautiful. And we both feel so graced that his end of life is carrying such a beauty to it. Like it, yeah, as far
Yeah.
as I'm concerned, you couldn't create it to be any better. So have you ever tried to
Mm.
close your heart to survive something painful? You remember ever doing that? Was it when your
Um,
mom died?
well, it's when my mother died for sure, because it's like I was so angry, and she's like, how do I move forward with this? Where do I go? Do
Mhm.
I live in this dysfunctional home with my stepfather? But fortunately, my in-laws fixed him up with a non-relative who was a widow, and he got married within 3 months and moved out. So I was like, oh, good. But it was like, it was awful. When you're so stressed and you're angry, your whole body starts to feel different and starts to shut down. It was just terrible to try to block that. But there's a book out there called The Body Keeps the Score, and
Mhm.
eventually it's all going to come out, in all kinds of different ways. Yeah, but yeah, so that was hard. And with my husband, I when he died, we were in the States when he overdosed, and we had a boat in Italy that was out of the water, and I'm like, oh no, all these things that I had to take care of,
I know
you
the
know,
adulting, the adulting.
sailboat. The what would you say,
I call
Amy?
it the
The what?
adulting. Like I can't even believe with end of life how much adulting you have to do. Like there are so many things
Oh
you
yeah,
have to
yeah,
and to go get a boat
yeah,
in Italy by yourself without that
yeah,
thing with you.
yeah. Well, I waited a year. I couldn't deal with it. I was paying rent, of course, because it was in Italy at that point, but we had it out of the water. Whenever we came back to the States, you just have to take the boat out of the water. It's safer. And it's like I'm paying rent, and how am I going to deal with this? Fortunately, we had an Italian friend that my husband got work for in the States that just, he loved my husband. So he said he could do anything for me. So that lined up. I
Oh,
said, I
good.
need to sell the boat and I'll give you a good chunk of that. I just have to sell it. I can't sail it back. What am I going to do? I'm not going to live on it myself. I'm not going to sail it myself. I mean, it's a long trip to come back to the States. And it's like,
Yeah.
I'm looking at a different life right now, being on the land and, you know, um, not into the boat life right now. So in Miami, a good boater friend of mine was born in Italy and she spoke fluent Italian. She said to me, Maggie, we're going to do it together. We're going over there together and I'm going to help you. So I was like, oh God. And she said, we're not going to stay on the boat because it was out of the water. You have to go upstairs. There's no toilet working when you're out. They call it on the hard. And she said, we're just going to visit there during the day and take out what you want. We'll donate and then some stuff will go to the dumpster, but we're going to make this a vacation. And I'll drive, she said.
Oh,
I
what a
went, oh God.
nice friend.
Oh, really? I was like, okay. And so I paid for most of the trip, but I told her I would because she didn't have money. She didn't make much money in her life. But we had a great place to stay. And we would have dinner out sometimes. Sometimes we bring it in and we'd have some wine. And, that was our evening of, cooling down, just being relaxed. And then we would go, to the boat every day. But sometimes we'd take a side trip and see different things. And I would be
Oh,
the passenger. It was just beautiful. And then I met the Italian guy. He said that he would really, he lived on the boat was on the east coast of Italy. He said he would find a buyer for it, and he did, and it didn't take too long. So it was just a miracle, and it was such a blessing to have good friends. And I mean, I'm sure God was helping me to get through this
mm.
because it was just really difficult. Something I didn't want to do, and we became photographers also on the boat, and we also made money by becoming photographers, taking pictures of where we were visiting and placing it with a story. The photographs commanded more money than the story did. So we did both of them for the big sailing magazines in the US, sail, boating. And I still have some of those articles, and they were just beautiful, and the pictures from it. So that was another side gig that we had.
Yay for you
So,
guys. Entrepreneurial in the heart of
when you're gonna
heavy grief.
Well, see, when you got a lot of time on your hands, right? We're in this lifestyle where when you're sailing, it's quiet. We can talk to each other for hours. We'd be reading or cooking or sleeping, or because we're going overnight. And one of our overnight trips was 29 days at sea. So you just get into a routine of who does the night watch, and I usually did the cooking, but my husband would do the chopping. He did the dishes, and we shared books. I mean, books that I would never thought I could read. That he was so well read, and when you see other boaters with a English speaking flag from where they were from, oh, I wonder what kind of books they have. So it broadens your horizon, that
Mhm.
life in a different way. The silence, the beauty of Mother Nature, the dolphins you see every day, all the birds. Most of the
Ah,
time it's very peaceful out there.
oh, that
You
sounds
talk to other
absolutely
boats. We eventually
wonderful.
got a ham radio. Yeah, it
So
was great.
what did you eventually learn about protecting yourself versus staying open?
Protecting myself versus saying, well, I don't, people think I'm pretty open, but I do protect myself. And I don't, I think before I jump into something. I'm living alone now since my husband died. Pretty much, I was with somebody for 2 years, but most of the 22 years since he's been gone, I've living alone and I have a lot of downtime to think of things. So, and I get asked to do a lot of things, but I have to, think about it first and how I'm going to do it. And it's some of it's scary because I'm in new territory a lot, and I'm taken some risks, safe risks, but it's like, oh, how do I do that? And will I do it right? And it's like, all right, never mind this right and wrong business. Just follow your heart, and do the best you can. And one thing I was born with, and I have to this day, I was born, my family told me, with a smile on my face. And I just
Oh,
automatically smile a lot. It's a gift that I've had since birth. As much as I wanted to get out of my mother's womb because she was smoking nonstop and drinking, I was choking when I came out laughing, smiling, laughing, and coughing, and low birth weight, a little girl. So, but I had this smile that's continued with me all my life. That's people tell me I don't even know I'm smiling. It just happens. It's just
oh.
automatic, so that's a gift that it's kind of like a magnet that people feel that they can talk to me,
So you
and
you
and I
create
hear a lot of
safety.
stories.
It's neat that the
Yes,
protection can also be a means of creating safety for others. So it's a nice combo to be, and I like even with your waiting a year to go to, for that to work out to go empty out the boat. To me, that was a great form of
yeah,
protection where
yeah,
you really listened
it
within
was.
until everything came into an
Mm,
alignment. You couldn't do it, and then look how beautiful it turned out with a lovely vacation and then the guy
I
being able to
know,
sell
and
it.
and I never thought of it that way until you just mentioned it.
Mhm.
Because I knew I had to do it, but I didn't want to do it. Didn't want to do it. You should do it. I don't want to do it. But then it all like, oh, hey, I'll go with you. Like, okay.
I love it. I mean,
So,
it's nice for people because I mean they say so often when you're in heavy, heavy grief, especially from the loss of a partner or a child, don't make any
mhm,
decisions for at least 6 months, they say. And I love that
yeah,
you waited a year. Like how perfect the way it all worked out, and just to allow yourself that time. That was a really safe, healthy way for you to protect yourself. So is there something you've
it
cared
was.
about since you're welcome, since you were very young, something that never truly left you, something that you cared about since you were very young?
Um, I had it's funny, my I've never met my grandparents, but my mother's mother married a guy 22 years younger than her, the second marriage. And I knew him. We called him Uncle Tom.
Mhm.
Now, Uncle Tom was so good to me, and he saw something in me that, my parents didn't see because, they were asleep. Well, let me just call it asleep. And and I remember my Uncle Tom saying to my mother, "Your daughter loves to dance." He said, "I am going to give you the money to give her all kinds of dance lessons that she wants, but I want you to take her." And my mother was like, she didn't really want to do that. But she said, "Your daughter needs help in life. You need to take care of her."
Mm.
So I went to Miss Hope's studio and I became a soloist acrobat, and I performed on stage in front of a few hundred people and had this act where I did the split with a cup of water on my head and
Wow.
got down to the floor and then drank it. That was like the biggest
Darling,
acrobat.
I love
But I loved to
that.
move as a kid and dance to the music and dance and always moving, and it was a good way, I know now, a good way of shaking off grief and stress by
Yeah,
moving. It's
movement.
like a qigong thing.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
anything thematic. Oh, that's I'm just so glad because I think
yeah,
when we look back, especially as elders, there was, whether it was a teacher or there was just some person along the way that actually can see you and can see into the goodness of your heart and
yes.
who you are. And it's amazing how just having one person acknowledge and seeing you can carry you forward in such
Oh
a
yeah,
beautiful way. Like the impact is undeniable. And yet I have had so many people share that there was just always that person that saw you. And I'm just so glad that he did that. And yay. Well, I love the number 22. So
yeah.
I'm glad he was 22 years older. And I love the number 22. So what has life taught you about anger?
About Anchor.
Yeah.
Ginger, anchor, what'd you say?
Anger.
Anchor?
ANGE.
Anger. Oh, a lot. I came from a very angry family. And acting out, you know, witnessing it, being angry because my mother, not present. You never know where you would find her when you came home from school. Sometimes you go missing, another state, but whatever. Um, and just feel like I couldn't live my life because I had this dysfunctional family, and just angry a lot. So I kept, as life went on, I would learn more about how detrimental anger can be to yourself, and things you may not even recognize at that point. But, it brings on a lot of stress, and it makes your cortisol levels go up, and it makes you age faster. It can give you ulcers. Like my stepfather, he held this anger, and he had ulcers, like bleeding ulcers. He held it in his stomach area. Me and my brother were the ones that screamed and yelled. And my mother just, drank and took pills and just went to sleep. But it was amazing in hindsight, witnessing how we all coped with anger and stress in different ways, but it was all there, but we weren't helping each other at all. It was my brother on his deathbed. The last few words he said was, "I am so sorry, everything I did to you. Can you
Oh,
forgive me?" That
yeah.
was within minutes of dying.
Wow.
Yeah. And
Wow.
he was diagnosed at the end of life with Alzheimer's. And he was always talking outlandish stuff, for the last few years of his life. But the last few minutes of his life, he was so lucid. He
Wow.
called me by my name and apologized for
Yay.
treating me so awful. Yeah. So, he learned something too, and he
And
was able to say a little bit about it at the end of life.
how did it make you feel
So it's
when he did that? What
I, I I cried. I cried. I was crying tears of joy. I was so happy. I was like amazingly over the top happy. And that evening I was volunteering here at Haywood Street, where we have the welcome table. And I was telling the woman that was working there, because she was like a really good friend of mine, and I inadvertently put my cell phone, my smartphone, in my back pocket, went down in the hall, went to the bathroom, and then went to flush the toilet. And I went, "Oh my God, this is my phone." I was sitting in the toilet. I was so in the mindset of my brother and what he had said, and just so high from that, I didn't even realize I put my phone
Oh,
in my back pocket and it
no.
sat on the toilet.
Did you
I
salvage it?
couldn't
Did you get it
resuscitate it, but
right?
no, I got it in rice right away because there's a kitchen there. Opened up a 5-pound bagger and stuck her in there, but
It didn't do it.
no, so it didn't do it. But I got another phone and blah blah blah, But that was just so precious and transformative, and just had to breathe when I feel, not that I'm nowhere near perfect, not that I am anywhere near perfect, but just breathe. Sometimes if I feel tense, I just slow deep breaths, slow, and 3 of them slow, real slow deep breaths. And of course, I still meditate twice a day, and
Beautiful.
that helps me. Yeah, yeah. So a
So
lot of
you,
good things I do for myself to release any of the past
Mhm.
trauma, because I actually had and I was looking it up now. 15 years ago, I had a nervous breakdown
Oh,
because my brother told me that my stepfather was abusing me. I said I didn't want to believe it, but I did sleep in the same room as him. But you keep stuff hidden away in your body. You don't want to tell anybody, and I didn't tell anybody. And then when he told me, that's when I just went. Blood pressure went off the sky. I had a stroke.
wow.
I
So,
had my doctor said I had whooping cough. I was just, my whole body was reacting. I was
wow.
coughing and peeing and diarrhea and and just
That's like
screaming and yelling.
the
Oh,
ultimate heartbreak, the ultimate heartbreak.
that was the
But
ultimate. But and then I got my doctor said you have to go to a therapist. I called and she said, I'm sending you 3 high blood pressure medications and check your blood pressure tomorrow. Because she said, I'm thinking about putting you in intensive care or Copestone. I don't know what to do first. Copestone's the psychiatric part of Mission Hospital. And I said, no, send me the medicine. I'll take and I'll monitor my blood pressure. So the next day, my blood pressure came way down. I was
Oh,
on
good.
3 high doses of blood pressure. She said, you have to go get a therapist today. If you can't figure out one, I will send you to one. So I called one of my therapist friends, but you don't see your friends. She's turned me on to this woman that just helped me immediately with neurofeedback.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
only had five sessions with her, and she said I was good to go. And I said, can I come back once more? Because it was working so well. She said, yeah, we'll come back once more, but I want you to go to the 12-step program, Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families. And that was another transformative thing that I did in my life for 3 years. And I actually became a facilitator for a women's group for 1 year.
Oh,
It
neat.
changed my life tremendously because
Oh,
I understood that my family trauma was nothing to do really with me, nothing. It was their stuff, and they were probably traumatized. And then it's a beautiful 12-step program that is specifically for being traumatized by family, friends, and how it has affected you. It's a specific 12-step program with their own 12-step book. And just last night I decided to go back. I haven't been there in
mhm.
like 10, 13 years. Because somebody told me that I had a little dust residue to clear up. I had a tarot card reading for the first time a couple of weeks ago. And I said, I've been thinking about going back to ACA. That's the abbreviation for it. And I did last night, and I realized I have a closure now. The dust is gone. I
Yay.
don't need it. I don't need it at this
Yay,
point.
yay, yay. I know I've
That
done
was
a lot
beautiful.
of 12 step along the way, and I didn't even have alcoholic parents, but I still had the addiction byproduct, I would say. But
Yeah,
more power to that higher aspect of yourself that seems to really have stuff show up and guide you to a good next step each
yeah,
time. I mean,
no,
that's what's so cool, when we take our time to look in the mirror and just tell ourselves we love ourselves, just to really,
yes.
acknowledge that you have an inner guide that's with you, that's always getting you to the right step at the right time. And I mean,
Mhm.
what a great, great story you're sharing. So how
Oh,
did you
I
know
am
when
so blessed.
you should feel
Go
blessed? How
ahead.
do you know when something is merely upsetting versus something that is truly yours to tend? How did you find that differential? I'm sure 12 step taught it to you where you realized, okay, this is mine or this
Yeah,
is
you
theirs.
feel it. I feel it in my gut.
Hmm.
My gut gets unsettled, if I don't feel right. And sometimes I'll eat a little food and that'll help. Some, protein or something. But, I'll sit with it and see, what is it? Public speaking has always been difficult for me, but the
Oh,
more I do it, the better I'm getting at it. I was scared to death to public speak, but I knew I need to market my business. So before COVID, I was out there going to the library in different spaces that I could go to
neat.
and market who I am and what I can do for people. So, and it was, the reception was just beautiful,
I bet.
and the more you do it, the better it gets. But, I just try to, if it's something I'm afraid of, what is it? What is that fear? What's
Mhm.
holding me back? And then you see people, you can tell sometimes people judge you, that's a big thing. I really try not to judge anybody. That's something that's been in my life to judge. It's so easy to judge others than ourselves. So I really try hard not to judge people, but you can tell when people are judging you, and you really don't want to take it personally. And it's like, and I just say to myself, I can't have everybody like or love me, it's just, they don't like me, I just don't have to, embody. what they're thinking, because I can kind of read people's, the way they look at you, or you know,
I would
that in
definitely,
their eyes,
yeah,
their body language.
yeah, that you could read people. I would definitely think with all the life experience that you have and all the different arenas that you've gone in and out of, in so many different ways. I
Yeah.
mean, gosh, everything. I mean, I know you can do a thing where you create a timeline, and this is interesting. And you
Hmm.
can do all the crucial big times in your life. Have you ever heard this? If you do on a timeline
No.
of the same gender parent as you, so your mother,
Hmm.
it'll shock you how
Hmm.
many different times when your mother had something huge happen in her life that you have at the same age. It's wild.
Hmm.
You sit there and track that out. It's like,
Wow.
wow, that's pretty fascinating. How much ancestral stuff or how much that we carry through are we actually carrying through related to our ancestors? So,
Oh, definitely, definitely. My mother, when she overdosed, she was 54 and I was 20. So I didn't really know. I mean, I feel that she was narcissistic, and she was very pretty, loved a lot of clothes and jewelry. And when she was, and usually in the summertime were her best months to, get herself together. And she worked at a high-end Jewish community country club and made a lot of money in the summertime. And she would get all dressed up with makeup and all that stuff. And but still, she wasn't. She you could tell she really wasn't a mother. She didn't want to be certainly a mother to me. She tried to be a mother to my brother, but my brother didn't want anything to do with her
oh
because
wow.
she drank too much. Yeah.
Now, what's the difference
So
in age
I don't
between
know.
you and your brother?
My older brother, 3 years. It was just the two of us.
Okay, so it was older.
And yeah, he
Um,
was old, and we were never close, and always fighting. He broke my nose. He punched me in the face and broke my nose, and my mother didn't do anything about it. Yeah, she just said, "All
I
right, you're not going to school today. I'm gonna get the ice. Don't tell your father,"
don't tell.
meaning the stepfather. Don't tell him. He'll get really angry and he'll probably hit you both. Oh, that's nice. Here I am with a
So
bloody broken nose.
I think you're going to already be able to answer this one question, but when you witness suffering or injustice, where do you turn? Prayer, silence, nature, action, or something else? I'm sure you're going to say meditation for one.
Well, yeah, there was a time there when I witnessed that I would, stand up if I believed in what was happening, the person that was getting bullied or whatever, I would get part of the mix, get in the mix. And then I realized this is no good. This is like the best you can do is maybe just stand there and be quiet. Or sometimes you just have to walk away because you might be a victim also. So now I do pray, and I take deep breaths, walk away, and I just hope that, they can work it out, because I can't get in the mix of all of that. It's not a good place to be.
I definitely
Does
intervened
that
a
answer your
lot.
question?
Yeah, yeah. And then I think your meditation. There's just so many things that sounds like you do to meditate twice a day, and you've talked about the breathing,
Yeah.
and just even the inner guidance where you get the loud tellings that you listen to. I mean, I think all those are beautiful things. But I've also witnessed that you get out and
Mm.
walk, so I know how much you like to get out in nature and walk. Which
Oh, nature is great.
I,
Yesterday, as cold as it was, my younger girlfriend, 29 years old, said, "Oh, Maggie, it's too cold. I can't go walking." So I went over to Center CCLD, Center for Conscious Living and Dying. That's now called Ember Light, for 2 weeks. And there was a wisdom circle posted. So I said, "Hey, I think I'm going to go over there. Wisdom circle sounds good." Well, it turned out it was a computer glitch, and it wasn't until the following week. But there were five of us that showed up. And one of the younger women, who's in her late 20s, said, "Why don't we all stay and have our own wisdom circle?" I
oh,
said, "Oh, yeah, that is wonderful. I love that, this wisdom coming out of younger people." So we had the best circle.
oh,
And it was amazing. This one guy was there with his wife, and he's 78, and he's going to be in a hospital and have surgery for the first time in his life. He's, he's scared. But he started to talk about it, and his wife was like, "Oh, this is wonderful." And he actually started to cry a little
Oh,
bit to let out some of that
good.
stress. It was so beautiful. So after that, this youngster asked me, she said, "Hey, do you want to go on a hike? Because you were talking about you were supposed to go on a hike earlier, but you didn't." I said, "Yeah, let's go." And the couple that were in the wisdom circle said, "We live around the corner, and there's a great place to hike." And I never knew about this hike. It's right off Riceville Road, and it's in a residential area. It starts in a residential area, and then you go right into the woods, and it's so quiet, and it brings you down
Oh,
to a river. And she said, "Well, while you're there," she said, "I'm going to agree. I'm going to give you our telephone number and also the code if you need to go in our house. We don't know these people. Go into our house and get warm. This is the code to get into the house."
oh.
I mean, isn't that sweet?
The whole
It
story is,
just
and
felt so
yesterday was such a
connected.
really powerful new moon. There were a lot of
Oh,
people doing ceremonies around
oh,
that because it
oh,
was about
really?
manifesting what you wanted to see in your
Oh,
world. And I think you guys,
oh
without
my
even knowing
God.
it, innocently, personified that with everything. I mean, you brought together community, you brought together just, being in the moment and acting in the moment versus trying to script it and all the different ways that it took.
Yeah.
What a
Oh God.
day.
And then there was the ACA meeting yesterday, last night.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I got the clarity on that. That was all in one day.
Beautiful. I mean, what a powerful day for you. So, what helps you
It was.
remain human in a world that can feel overwhelming and harsh? Do you?
Well, I, I need to know what's going on with the news. My family was into politics and I'm interested, but I have decided that I will not embody it. I need to get the information to know what's going on, and I will click on some things that with my signature that I believe in strongly to support, people on the other side that aren't in power right now, and other good causes that the health insurance, the food, so many things that are going on right now. I don't want to get upset about it because I know in life things change all the time. And I
Mhm.
know this too shall change. It's not sustainable at the level that it's working now. So, you know, I just try, and I'm not going to get nervous or angry or talk about it or talk to people that get angry. I don't want to be around people that are angry and
I agree.
just, foaming at the mouth about all that stuff. I don't want to, it doesn't get anybody any place. It just brings you down and just could make you sick, you know? So, I try to change the subject. I'll say, gee, could we not talk about this? I don't feel good about talking about whatever they're talking about that's negative. And sometimes they'll be taken back, but and look at me in a weird way. And well, okay,
Well, I'm starting
but
to
I
hear
have
a
to speak
lot
my
more
truth.
people say that they're pulling back from, especially really lately, that so many people are
Yeah,
dropping away from social media. I mean, it's a great arena
yeah,
to be connected to all the things that are going on, especially locally, but it's just so difficult
yeah.
to be a part of it. I have a relative that's a dog breeder, and she got so upset over how people were talking to her and said, no more, and
Oh,
Facebook is going to take her down. I'm like, oh my gosh. So it's
yeah,
like
oh,
you try and voice the injustice,
yeah.
but you get punished, not the people that are causing the issues. So have you ever taken a meaningful step without knowing how things would unfold? I would say you have probably a lot.
Oh gosh, well, yeah, well, um, the boating life,
Right.
because going in that, and I didn't mention before, but we neither one of us knew how to swim either. And it's not something you learn as an adult because I took swimming lessons after Charles died. I said maybe I should take swimming lessons. I just could not coordinate the breath and the strokes, and I was just kind of getting out of breath and swallowing water.
You were
But
so
yeah, that
lucky
was
when
big.
that boat turned over on its side then. Oh my gosh.
Well, we have life preservers, we have safety harnesses,
Mhm.
we have, so that, the boat could still go on and drag you along with, your safety harness on. your life preserver. But yeah. So, that in staying, a lot of men, there's single-handers out there. There's people that drive boats around oceans at day and night, and they're all by themselves. So they got to sleep. They're nodding off. But so lots of times they'll stand on at the back of the boat and take a pee. And lots of times they die. A big rogue wave comes and takes them over and gone. So I had, I insisted with my husband, you do not do that when I'm sleeping. You come down below. There's no standing up and doing your business out the back of the boat, because we've heard too many stories about people going missing that way.
Wow.
So so what else have I done? Well, when I didn't know where to live after my husband died, I was familiar with Miami Beach because I was aligned with the hospice there, and working the mainland of Miami and patients on Miami Beach. But once the tunnel vision, opened up, I saw that the culture there wasn't, something that I wanted to put roots into. I love the ocean. I could bike to the ocean. I had good work there, but my girlfriend, who I was renting with, told me that she was selling the house, which I had an apartment attached to the house in Miami Beach, and moving to Asheville.
Oh, so that's
And
how
I
you
said,
got here.
"Where's
Oh,
that?" I
cool.
said, "Yeah." I said, "Where is that?" And she said, "It's northwestern North Carolina." I said, "I've heard of it, but had no idea. I've never been there." And she said, "Well, now that Charles has died, we're going to get a lot of money for this house, and we're willing to get a big house with like an attached little shed, not shed, but a little bungalow or something, because a lot of places in Montford have that. It used to be the helps quarters.
Yeah,
We
yes.
can get a big place, and you can stay there." And I said, "You know what? I'm not ready. I can't make a big move like that now. I just need to, stay put, and I just can't do that right now." But a year later, I did. I went up to visit them once on a Greyhound bus. I was in such deep grief. I wasn't going to drive.
Oh,
I wasn't going to fly. So I decided to take the Greyhound bus and just sit there and journal, look out the window, and just, say, where the hell am I going? And it was 22 hours, and it was like a chicken bus. And it stopped
there's that
so many
22 again,
places.
though. You had that uncle that was 22 years older. Pay attention to those. When you have numbers that
Yeah,
repeat like
22.
that, that's very fascinating.
My husband was 22 years, no, 22 years younger than me. Yes, 22.
See,
So
pay
yeah, 22
attention.
is a
And
good number.
my address has 22 in it, and I love the number 22. That's pretty cool.
Nice. And I
That's
like
three
four.
times your naming for me, Maggie. That's
Wow.
that's to be noted.
Yeah. So I took
So,
this chicken bus, and he picked me up, and at the which is now defunct, the bus station there
mhm.
on Tunnel Road. And then I stayed with them a few days and looked around. And they took me to all the places that looked like they were dancing places and restaurants. And I said, "Yeah, I like it, but I have to, let me go home and think about it." So I took the bus back home. And then my girlfriend called me and said, "Hey, I found a great place for you to rent in Montford, right close to us. And the woman's interested in you." So I went up again. A male friend of mine, just a friend, had a new car, and he said, "Hey, let's go for a drive. I'll drive you up there." And the woman said we could bring sleeping bags and sleep in this prospective apartment that I was thinking about renting. So I rented it, and I said, "Okay, I'm going to go back, and I'll be back in August with my two cats." And so I did that. I came back and had two cats in the front seat, and had a mover bring the rest of my stuff. That was in August. Um, in November, the woman um, said to me, "I just came off my bipolar meds. I don't like you, and I want you out of here." It's winter, right? It's winter. Oh my God. So, all right, that's challenging. What do I do now? So I was a big biker when I first arrived here. I used to bike everywhere. So I would go around and look for people going into their homes in Montford or coming out of their homes and ask them. And that's how I found my place, another place in Montford.
Oh,
Yeah. I was out there with the snow and the cold and all bundled up on my bike, looking and asking. So it was pretty transformative. And I wound up in a great place. And the woman had a couple of cats and a dog, so we took care of each other's animals when we were away. And
Perfect.
and I lived there 7 years until
Oh,
she said it was
good.
too much house. She had to sell it. So
That's
now
cool. 7 years is a good amount of time. Yay.
yeah, yeah. So
And
yeah,
how have you felt about Asheville as far as getting to live here? What
I
do you
love it.
Mhm.
I love it. I mean, I've seen it change in 20 years for sure, and of course I don't want to be one of these grumbly um, locals that say, oh, all these people coming here from, Florida and California,
Mhm.
and I'm one of them, right? and, um, and now I'm thinking, oh, all these people are still coming in, but no, 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 you can't be like that. You're one of them, even though you've been here 20 years. This is my last stop. I
Mhm.
am not moving out of Asheville. I've been offered to go to Old Fort, this beautiful place, cheaper rent, and it's like, no, I'm not living down the mountain
I know
and trying. And
climbing
I'm
up,
so
going up.
connected.
Yeah, yeah. I think going up and down that mountain like that, that
It-
was a tough one. So what wisdom
oh yeah.
would you want future generations to carry? And you've told so many beautiful stories. I'm grateful because I think you've touched on probably so many arenas that people have experienced, and you've had them all versus you've had the smorgasbord versus they might just have one of them. But so what wisdom would you want future
Yeah.
generations to carry when their hearts feel tender or tired?
Well, just find carve out quiet time for yourself every day, and reflect, journal, whatever, but just get into your own thoughts on what are you doing, where are you going, what do you want, rather than just keep running around and being so connected to the smartphones, the internet, social media, and just slow down, just try, and certainly breathe. Remember to breathe, because when we're running around, we don't breathe so well.
Hmm.
And be, become a good listener. Listen to people, because a lot of us, and I've been there, and I know sometimes I just want to talk rather than listen. But become a good listener, especially if you want a good friend. And let's see what else. You don't drive like a maniac. A lot of people out there driving like maniacs since COVID and the storm. It's like, oh boy, I just feel like you know there's more accidents than ever, and just try not to get into that mindset of rushing,
Hmm.
and find out what your true passion in life is. Just figure out most people in a job they do not like, and they really don't want to get up and go to work, and it's not healthy to
Hmm.
do something that takes up most of your waking hours that you're not liking at all.
Well,
And
one of
just
my
sometimes you have to take those jobs to get someplace else.
yes, and
What
you
about what, Andy?
are meeting the right person. Well, so I would say
Yeah.
one of my favorite takeaways from so much of what you shared today, and you just echoed it just now, is really just taking the time. I just witnessed somebody that almost died. He was a severe alcoholic to the point of when he had cancer and was getting chemo and radiation, he was putting the alcohol into his feeding tube. That's how severe
Oh
alcohol
my God.
was. And when
Wow.
you get to hear his story, you understand what caused him to be there. But and what he accepted, got down on his knees and accepted Jesus into his life when he was in rehab. After all that,
Mhm.
he's made it through the cancer. It's just amazing because it was his esophagus and stomach.
Wow.
But that what the two things he said literally is that when we got to see him, he came to visit, was that he lives in the present moment right now. And the same thing that you echoed throughout all of this that I think is just so cool. Like even when you got the offer to come to Asheville, I love hearing how many times, Maggie, you really took your time before taking a big action. I think that is so, so healthy and good for me to
Mhm.
hear because of everything I'm in. And just even allowing, like, how can the divine come in when we don't get quiet? No, it can't,
Hmm.
we can't listen and hear
Yeah.
what we need to hear in the moment. So I think it's been really cool. So as we come to a close and you stand here in this season of your life, what feels most true for you to say now about living, loving, or being human?
Which is most true for me is that I love me, Maggie, and I've learned to
Mm.
put myself first in not a selfish way, because most of us were brought up that we were supposed to help others first.
Mhm.
And if we didn't, we were selfish. And it's not selfish to take care of yourself, number one, because if you're in a good space, you can do all kinds of wonderful things out in the world.
Yay. And it's so beautiful because well, first of all, I got chills throughout it all. And I think mm, I mean, definitely give yourself hugs. I know you give free hugs to everybody else, but
Mm,
definitely give yourself
there I
a
go.
hug because you yeah, because you've done, you've figured it all out. That's why I love elders. I love elders. So
Yeah, me too.
listening to you, we're reminded that a life lived in service doesn't harden the heart. It teaches it how to stay open. What stays with
Yes.
me is how your life shows that tenderness, when chosen again and again, becomes a form of strength. And your story reminds us that wisdom isn't something we reach, it's something we practice through how we live. And thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's what for showing us what a lived open heart can look like. Thank you so, so
Thank you
much,
so.
Maggie. I am so grateful that so many, and we will be out there once we get our launch out there, that so
Yes.
many will get to hear your story. And I also want to say to the audience, once you get to listen to this, that we had a little bit of technical difficulties. So Maggie's picture throughout this has kind of been funky. And we did so many different arenas to try and get the tech to work, and for some reason it wasn't complying. So we want to thank you for your patience in still with us throughout this beautiful interview, and have a blessed rest of your 80th year that you're living. And it's a pleasure to have witnessed, the beauty that you personify. And I truly am grateful to you for doing this today. Thank you, Maggie.
Oh, Annie, thank you. And I'm grateful that you're doing this with, that you're to reaching out to other people too. And beautiful path.
Thank
Keep it up.
you.
You're in service. It's another form of service.
I agree. Thank you. Thank you.